"You're so ungrateful, Claire. You don't deserve this house." My mother's voice sliced through the humid air like a blade. We were standing in the foyer of her dream home, the one she'd bragged about building from scratch, the one she swore would stay in the family. The smell of fresh lilies lingered in the hallway, still arranged from last week's open house. But today wasn't about a celebration. It was about eviction. She tossed the folder onto the marble counter. Inside were legal documents. Her lawyer stood behind her, silent, smug. And I didn't say a word. Not yet. Behind her, my younger brother Jason leaned against the banister, arms crossed, eyes avoiding mine. I felt the sting rise in my chest. Not from shock, but from knowing this had been coming. She called me ungrateful. But soon, she'd realize I was the one holding the keys. My name is Claire Jennings, and I was born on a stormy night in Charleston, South Carolina. The kind of night where thunder rolls across the sky like an angry drum and the air feels thick with unspoken warnings. My mother, Linda Jennings, always liked to tell people that my arrival was a bad omen. A joke, she'd say with a laugh at parties. But even as a little girl, I understood something deeper. She meant it. Linda was the kind of woman who made herself known the moment she walked into a room. Impeccably dressed, charming to strangers, and a master of appearances. To the world, she was a Southern belle turned real estate queen, known for turning rundown properties into dream homes. But to me, she was a glass house, perfect on the outside, splintered on the inside. My dad, Robert Jennings, was the quiet type. He died when I was 9. A heart attack in his sleep. After that, Mom changed. Or maybe she simply stopped pretending. I had one sibling, Jason, 2 years younger. He was always her favorite. She never said it out loud, but children don't need words to know where they stand. Jason got the hugs, the praise, the grace for mistakes. I got the criticism, the silence, the cold glares when I asked too many questions. Still, I tried. As a little girl, I remember tiptoeing into the kitchen early on Sunday mornings, trying to surprise her with breakfast. I'd scramble eggs, burn toast, and pour orange juice just the way she liked it. She'd come down in her robe, glance at the mess, and sigh. "Claire, next time just let me handle it, okay?" By age 12, I'd stopped trying to impress her and started trying to prove her wrong. I studied hard, earned straight A's, got a scholarship to the University of Georgia, majored in business with a minor in architecture, because somewhere in the back of my heart, I still wanted to be part of her world. I thought if I could speak her language, property lines, and profit margins, she might finally see me. When I was 22, just out of college, she bought what she called her legacy project, a crumbling 3-story brick colonial just outside the city. "This is going to be my crown jewel," she told the local paper. "A home that defines the Jennings name." She named it the Magnolia House. And even though I wasn't invited into the planning meetings or the design walkthroughs, I showed up. Every weekend. I painted shutters, ripped up rotten floorboards, replanted her front garden. She never said thank you. But once, when I was scrubbing grout from the upstairs bathroom, I heard her on the phone, telling a friend, "Claire's surprisingly useful when she puts her mind to something." It was the closest I ever got to praise. I was 24 when things began to shift. Jason had started drinking, crashed Mom's Range Rover into a stop sign, and she covered for him. No consequences. No lectures. She called it a minor slip and gave him money to get his feet back under him. Meanwhile, I was working 12-hour shifts at a small design firm and living in a basement apartment that flooded when it rained. One night, my grandmother, Evelyn, my dad's mother, called me. She was the only one in the family who ever spoke to me like I mattered. "Baby girl," she said, "you've always been the one who held this family together, even when they didn't see it." I cried that night. Not because I was weak, but because someone finally said it out loud. Evelyn passed away 3 months later. And with her, it felt like the last voice of kindness in my life was gone. At the funeral, Mom was all poise and pearls, but I noticed she didn't shed a single tear. Jason sat by her side, looking bored. That night, I stayed late at the cemetery after everyone had gone. I knelt by Evelyn's grave, fingers trembling as I read the small card she had left for me in her will. To Claire, for when you need the strength to remember who you are. Inside the envelope was a simple brass key and a deed. It was for the Magnolia House. Signed over to me. I didn't understand at first. I thought it must be a mistake. But the paperwork was real. Evelyn had quietly purchased half the ownership rights from Linda during a financial slump and had held them ever since. She had waited until her death to transfer them to me. For weeks, I kept the deed hidden in a safe in my apartment, unsure of what to do. I knew if I told Mom, it would trigger a war. And part of me, despite everything, still wanted peace. But the peace didn't come. One Saturday afternoon, I arrived at Magnolia House unannounced with a box of antique kitchen knobs I'd found at a flea market. I thought maybe they'd fit the aesthetic and maybe, just maybe, she'd be proud I was thinking like a designer. I walked in through the back, where the French doors opened to the kitchen. I stopped dead. Inside, I saw her and Jason. They were at the kitchen island, flipping through renovation budgets. Jason was pointing at a line that read, "Potential buyer offer, $2.1 million. She was nodding. "It's time," she said. "Claire doesn't need to know. She thinks she's entitled just because she painted a few walls. I've put my life into this." Jason shrugged. "Let's just sell it before she gets any stupid ideas." I backed out before they saw me. My hands were shaking. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat on my bed, staring at the brass key Evelyn had given me. I called a lawyer the next morning. His name was Michael Decker, a straight-talking, sharp-eyed estate attorney who had helped Evelyn with her affairs in the past. When I showed him the deed and explained what was happening, he looked at me like I had just handed him a loaded gun. "You legally own this property," he said. "Half of it, if not more. And with recent documentation and inheritance, possibly all of it, depending on how your mother recorded her holdings." I nodded slowly. "Do you want to fight this?" he asked. I looked down at my hands, callous from years of doing everything to earn love that was never going to be given. "No," I said. "I want to win without lifting a single weapon." He smiled. "We can do that." Over the next 3 months, we began quietly transferring utilities into my name. Property taxes, HOA documents. We updated the title. We waited until every legal thread was fully woven. I didn't tell anyone. I just kept showing up at Magnolia House like always. Sometimes I brought flowers. Sometimes I brought coffee. Always I smiled. Always I played the part. Until the day she handed me that eviction folder. That was the moment I knew. She had no idea. No idea that she was standing in my home, trying to push me out. And what came next wasn't just revenge. It was restoration. "You might want to take a look at this before you go any further." My voice was calm. Too calm, maybe. But it came from somewhere deeper than anger, somewhere rooted in truth. I placed the crisp manila envelope on the marble counter, right next to the one she had flung at me moments ago. My mother, Linda, narrowed her eyes. Jason scoffed. "What is that?" "A letter of apology." "No," I said. "It's a deed. The deed." Linda's expression cracked for just a second. She blinked, like she hadn't heard me right. Then she leaned forward, slow, like she was inspecting something absurd. "What are you talking about?" she said, opening the envelope. She pulled out the papers, copies of the transfer from Evelyn Jennings' estate, including property tax records, notarized title documents, and legal confirmation of my sole ownership of the Magnolia House. Her fingers trembled. Slightly. Jason leaned in beside her. His jaw went slack. This is a mistake," he muttered. "There's no way, Mom, this is garbage, right?" But Linda didn't answer. She kept reading. Her polished nails tapped the paper in rhythm, tap, 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 as if trying to control her reaction through noise. "Where did you get this?" she finally asked. "Evelyn left it to me. Months ago. I had it reviewed by Decker Law. Everything's been legally processed and updated. The utilities are in my name. The taxes are paid under my account. The Magnolia House is mine, Mom." I stepped back, gave her space, let the silence swell. Jason looked between us, like a kid caught in the middle of a storm. "You're lying," he said. "You're bluffing." Evelyn wouldn't do that. She hated drama. She also hated manipulation, I replied, eyes locked on Linda. "And she saw everything. Every time you dismissed me. Every time you put Jason above the rest. Every time you said family came first, except when it came to me." Linda finally spoke. Her voice was cold, tight, and full of disbelief. "You don't have the experience to manage this kind of property. This house isn't a sandbox, Claire. It's a legacy. My legacy." "No," I said. "It's Evelyn's legacy. And now it's mine." Her hand balled into a fist, gripping the paper so hard her knuckles turned white. Jason was pacing now, mumbling curse words under his breath. "This is Bull's **T. This is so screwed up. You can't do this, Claire." But I had already done it. I reached into my bag and gently placed the brass key Evelyn had given me on the counter. The light from the chandelier caught it just right. It gleamed gold against the white granite. Linda stared at it. I saw something flicker in her eyes. Fear? Loss? Maybe recognition. I didn't wait for her to ask questions. "I'm not kicking you out," I said. "Not yet. But things are going to change." "You think you're in charge now," she said bitterly. "You think owning this place makes you powerful?" I shook my head. "No. It's not about power. It's about truth. And I'm done pretending." Jason stormed toward the hallway. "I'm not staying here for this freak show. Let me know when you come to your senses." I didn't stop him. Linda stood frozen, her hand still on the deed, like letting go of it would confirm everything. I gave her one last look. "This house wasn't taken from you," I said quietly. "You gave it away when you chose image over family. I just picked up the pieces you left behind." And then I walked away, into the living room, sat on the window bench Evelyn had always loved. The one where she used to sip tea and read gardening books. The one that now faced a perfectly blooming magnolia tree. From behind, I heard the rustle of paper as Linda finally released the deed. She didn't speak again that night. The next day, I returned to the house with my lawyer. Linda had locked herself in the master suite. Jason was gone. Michael and I walked room to room, reviewing documents, taking inventory, ensuring the locks had been changed where necessary. It wasn't about drama, it was about protecting what was now legally mine. On the dining room table, I found a photo. It was of me and Evelyn, taken years ago during the early renovation. We were both wearing overalls, covered in dust and paint. She was smiling wide, her hand on my shoulder. I hadn't seen that photo in ages. I picked it up and held it to my chest. Michael watched me silently, then said, "You want to press charges for attempted fraud? Or eviction without cause?" I shook my head. "No," I said. "Let her sit with this. That's punishment enough." He nodded, folded his papers, and left. Over the next week, the mood in the house was brittle. Linda didn't speak to me unless she had to. She didn't yell either. She simply moved around the space like a ghost trying to reclaim something she'd already lost. I tried to be civil. I gave her space. I even brought her tea one evening, chamomile, like she used to drink. She didn't touch it. Instead, she looked up at me from the couch and asked, "Do you think you're better than me now?" "No," I said. "I think I finally understand you." She stared at me for a moment, lips pressed thin. Then she looked away. I walked out of the room. 3 days later, she called a family meeting. I knew what that meant, damage control. She invited Aunt Sharon, Uncle Dean, even Cousin Melissa. The ones who always saw Linda as the family matriarch, the perfect hostess with the perfect life. They all showed up in their pastel sweaters and polite smiles, unaware that the rules had changed. When everyone was seated in the front room, Linda cleared her throat. "I wanted to explain the confusion regarding Magnolia House," she began, her voice measured. "There's been a misunderstanding in the legal transfer of ownership, and Claire believes." I cut in. "No," I said clearly, "there is no confusion. I own this house. Here are the documents." I handed them to Aunt Sharon, who blinked, confused. "This can't be real," she said. "Evelyn left it to you?" Yes, I replied. And I didn't come here to humiliate anyone. I came to tell you that the legacy of this home is still alive, but it will be run differently now. Uncle Dean frowned. Claire, are you saying Linda has no claim? I'm saying she gave it up a long time ago, I said. And I'm just protecting what was given to me to restore. Cousin Melissa stood awkwardly, then sat back down. No one knew what to say. The queen had fallen, but the new heir wasn't angry. Just done. That night, I stood in the upstairs hallway staring at the newly restored crown molding. I remembered painting it with Evelyn. She always said, "The smallest details make a house feel loved." I realized in that moment, I wasn't fighting my mother. I was fulfilling my grandmother's vision. I was building something better. It started with the slamming of drawers. Every morning for the next 2 weeks, my mother made it a point to express her dissatisfaction without ever saying a word. The silverware drawer clanged shut. Cabinet doors banged against their frames. Her heels clicked furiously across the hardwood, as if she were walking out of a courtroom and not the kitchen. She didn't need to yell. Linda Jennings had always been an expert in silent warfare. She refused to use the guest bathroom, even though the master suite was no longer hers. She left passive-aggressive notes on the fridge. She rearranged furniture without asking and continued answering the door as if she still owned the house. I tried to stay above it. I reminded myself this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about dignity. Still, some mornings I clenched my jaw so hard I had to massage my temples to keep the tension from erupting. One Sunday morning, I found her standing in the garden, pruning the roses I had just planted 2 days earlier. "Those were new," I said quietly, stepping outside. "They were overgrown," she replied without turning around. "They were 2 days old." Silence. Then she dropped the clippers onto the soil and stood up straight, facing me. "You've made your point," she said. "You won. Are you happy now?" I blinked. "This isn't a game, Mom. It's not about winning." She laughed bitterly. "Of course it is. Don't act so righteous. You just wanted to humiliate me." "No," I said firmly. "I wanted the truth to matter for once. That's all I've ever wanted." She crossed her arms. "You think this house is going to fix things? You think you'll feel better sitting in my chair, sleeping in my bed?" I took a breath. "I'm not trying to replace you. I'm trying to reclaim the part of me that always bent to your rules just to survive." Her face changed slightly, almost like she recognized the girl I used to be. The one she had molded, shamed, and reshaped so many times that I forgot what I looked like underneath. But just as quickly, her expression hardened again. "You sound just like your father," she spat. "Always preaching, always playing victim. Dad was the only person who didn't pretend around you." She stepped forward then. "You think he was a saint? He gave up on everything. That man died with nothing to show for it." I flinched. And then out of nowhere, someone else spoke. "Don't talk about him like that." We both turned. It was Emily, Jason's wife. She was standing at the side gate, holding a plastic grocery bag and a baby carrier in the crook of her arm. My breath caught. We hadn't spoken in weeks, not since the ownership reveal. Emily had always stayed neutral, quiet, watching. But now her voice rang out like a bell in the stillness. She stepped inside the yard and looked my mother dead in the eye. "Robert Jennings was the only decent soul in this family. And if Claire has even a piece of him in her, then this house is better off." Linda blinked like she'd been slapped. Emily walked over to me and placed the grocery bag in my hands. "Thought you might need eggs," she said. Then, softer, "And back up." I nodded, stunned. She took a seat on the porch swing like it was the most natural thing in the world. And in that moment, something cracked open. Linda turned without a word and went back inside. Later that night, I found Emily in the kitchen washing bottles. The baby, Madeline, was asleep in the carrier on the floor. "You didn't have to step in," I told her. "Yes, I did," she said. "Jason left me last week. Said I was taking your side just by not yelling at you. So he packed a bag and disappeared." I froze. I'm sorry, Em." "Don't be. It was coming. He always took after your mother." She dried her hands, then looked at me carefully. I want to stay here a while, she said. Just until I figure things out. You can stay as long as you need. She smiled. And for the first time in weeks, I felt not alone. The days passed slowly. Linda became more bitter, more desperate. One afternoon, she brought home a man named Grant Morrison, a real estate broker known for helping aging homeowners liquidate gracefully. I found them in the living room, him flipping through a printed portfolio and her nodding along. I'm sorry, what's going on here? I asked. Linda smiled coolly. I'm just exploring options. Grant stood up. Mrs. Jennings mentioned she was interested in putting the house on the market. She doesn't have the right to sell anything, I said flatly. She's not on the title. Grant blinked.
Oh,
I wasn't aware of that. She didn't mention it? I asked. He glanced at her. Linda looked away. Apologies, he said, quickly packing up his portfolio. This seems like a personal matter. It is, I replied. Once he left, I turned to her. You're really trying to sell a house you don't own? I built this house, she snapped. I made every decision, from the molding to the fireplace. You just swept in and stole it. I didn't steal it. Evelyn gave it to me. You're the one who tried to evict me. She turned her back, trembling with rage. And then came the sentence I'd been waiting for. I wish you'd never been born. The air thickened. I stood there, unable to move. And then, as calmly as I could, I said, I know, but I was. And now I'm done pretending your cruelty is normal. That night, I drafted the rental agreement. Michael helped me finalize it. It wasn't revenge, it was structure. Linda could stay in one of the upstairs bedrooms for a reduced rent, enough to remind her that the power dynamic had shifted, but not so much that it felt punitive. I left the agreement on her bedroom door with a note. You may stay, but no guests, no brokers, and no tampering with property. If you choose not to sign this, I'll assume you're making other plans. She didn't speak to me for 3 days. Then one morning, I found the signed copy on the kitchen counter. Beside it was her wedding ring. And a note.
Fine.
You win. But this wasn't a victory. It was a surrender. And I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. A week later, something shifted. I hosted a small gathering, just a few neighbors and friends, including Emily and Madeline. We sat in the garden Evelyn once loved, sipping lemonade and laughing about anything that wasn't about family drama. As the sun dipped low, I noticed Linda watching from the window. For the first time, she didn't look angry, just distant.
Lost.
Emily followed my gaze and whispered, maybe she's starting to realize what she's done. Maybe, I said. I wasn't hoping for her to change. But I also wasn't holding on to who she had been. The house was still tense, but it was mine. Fully. Emotionally. Legally. Spiritually. And when I walked the halls at night, I could feel Evelyn with me. Not in a ghostly way, but in the quiet confidence she had always tried to instill in me. I didn't know how it would feel when I finally walked back into the house. My house. The first time I stepped inside after the court ruled in my favor, I expected to feel triumphant, even smug. But I didn't. I just felt quiet. Not empty. Not sad. Just still. The walls didn't look any different. The same cream-colored wallpaper, the same family photos still hung in the hallway, slightly crooked like always. The same faint scent of rosewater my mother always used in the guest bathroom. And yet, everything had shifted. This was no longer a place I was being tolerated in. This was a place I now chose to own. That first night alone in the house, I walked room to room, touching things, whispering memories to the air. I stopped in the sunroom, my mom's favorite place to sip coffee, and criticize the neighbors. I sat in her wicker chair, the one with the floral cushion that always squeaked. And I realized something I hadn't admitted before. I missed her. Not the version of her who'd called me names and handed my brother the key to every opportunity. I missed the mom I remembered as a kid, the one who used to braid my hair and sing old Motown songs while scrubbing dishes. The one who laughed when I danced in my pajamas. But that woman had left long ago. And I had spent years trying to earn the love of someone who'd already decided I wasn't enough. Sitting in that chair, I said it out loud to the empty room. I don't need your approval anymore, Mom. I never did. One of the most healing things I did during that time was write her a letter. Not to give to her. Just for me. It read, "Dear Mom, you once told me I was a mistake. That you should have stopped at Jason. For a long time I believed you. I worked so hard to be your version of good. Quiet, polite, unselfish, agreeable. I said thank you when you handed me leftovers while Jason got gift cards. I laughed it off when you called me dramatic, emotional, or too much. But I'm not too much. I was never too much. You were just too unwilling to see me. I'm done carrying the weight of your disappointment. I have my own voice now. And this house isn't your legacy anymore. It's my liberation.
Love.
Claire." I folded the letter and tucked it behind a drawer in the vanity she used to sit at every morning. It didn't matter if she ever found it. The healing was in saying it. I started therapy not long after I won the house. I knew I had work to do, not just financially or legally, but emotionally. I needed to unlearn the belief that I was always second best. My therapist, Dr. Myers, helped me unpack things I didn't even know were still affecting me. We talked about emotional neglect, about the way subtle favoritism can fracture a child's identity. She gave me tools to rebuild self-worth. Not the flashy, external kind, but the kind that doesn't flinch when someone walks away. I also learned how to set boundaries with Jason, who tried to sneak back into my life once he realized I wasn't just playing real estate, and with distant relatives who suddenly wanted to visit. One cousin called me a traitor to the family. I just smiled and said, "You weren't around when they locked me out. You don't get to comment now." And just like that, I realized I didn't owe explanations anymore. As I slowly started remodeling the house, repainting the kitchen, tearing out the old carpet, replacing the chandelier that always flickered, I realized I was also remodeling my inner life. Room by room, I made the place mine. I turned my mom's sewing room into a meditation space. The basement that Jason used as a game den? Now a creative studio, where I painted late at night with jazz playing in the background. I threw a housewarming party. Not out of spite. Just to reclaim joy in the very space where I'd once been told I didn't belong. Friends came. Real ones. Some of them cried when they saw the transformation, not just of the house, but of me. One of them hugged me and said, "You look free." And for the first time, I believed them. One rainy afternoon, nearly 6 months later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered cautiously. It was Jason. His voice was tired. Not arrogant, not defensive. Just human. "Hey, Claire. I'm in town. I don't know." I drove by the house. "I didn't say anything," he continued. "It looks really good." I barely recognized it. "You did something beautiful." I thanked him. Then he said, "I wanted to apologize. Not just for siding with Mom. For everything. I should have stood up for you years ago. I was a coward." A long pause followed. "I don't expect forgiveness," he added. I didn't give it. Not right away. But I told him I appreciated the call. That I hoped he was doing better. I didn't invite him in. But I didn't hang up either. And that I realized was progress. One evening, I walked through the house barefoot, candles lit, Miles Davis playing softly. I passed the mirror near the dining room and caught my reflection. For a moment, I didn't recognize her. She stood tall. Her eyes were soft but steady. Her shoulders relaxed. This was me. Not the version who flinched at my mother's tone. Not the girl who apologized for existing. This was the woman I had become. I whispered, "You made it." And I meant it. My mom used to judge people who didn't have manicured lawns. She'd call them sloppy or low class. So I planted wildflowers instead. Lavender, marigolds, echinacea, things that grew in chaos and still bloomed with purpose. Neighbors complimented the garden. One even said, "It looks like freedom." Exactly. This house no longer needed to be perfect. It needed to be real. Just like me. A year later, the house looked different, not because of major renovations but because of what it no longer held. There were no more echoing footsteps full of tension. No more passive-aggressive dinner conversations. No shrines to a family legacy built on control. The walls, though still painted in Mother's favorite eggshell white, now reflected a different kind of light. A softer, more genuine one. It took me months to fully settle in. The first few weeks after the court ruling were disorienting. Walking through the house I had once only been allowed in as a guest, now knowing every square foot legally belonged to me, it was surreal. But with time, I made it mine. The grand piano in the parlor, once just a showpiece, now held sheet music I actually played. I'd learned as a child but was never encouraged. Mother thought it was a waste of time. Now every evening I played something just for me. Something that made the house feel alive. The living room, once so formal and cold, now had a mismatched reading chair I picked up from a flea market. I placed a throw blanket over it and positioned it right next to the window, where the light pooled like honey in the afternoons. It became my thinking spot. My writing spot.
My sanctuary.
I didn't change the structure of the house. That wasn't the point. The point was that I was no longer a visitor here. I was no longer trying to prove I belonged. I did belong. The real transformation, though, wasn't in the house, it was in me. For years, I'd let the label ungrateful haunt me. It was Mother's favorite insult, and somewhere along the way, I started to believe it. I questioned everything I wanted. Was I selfish for not choosing the path she laid out? Was I wrong for expecting kindness in a home built on criticism? But slowly, I unlearned that voice. I stopped measuring my worth by how many times I said, "Thank you," while swallowing pain. I stopped apologizing for growing in a direction she didn't approve of. Therapy helped.
A lot.
So did journaling. And silence. Long, uninterrupted silence where I could hear myself think without her commentary in the background. That silence became sacred. And in it, I found clarity. I wasn't ungrateful. I was unwilling to shrink. Surprisingly, Jason came around. 3 months after the court decision, he showed up on my doorstep, holding a plant. Not flowers. Jason was never that symbolic. Just a rubber plant in a plastic pot with a wrinkled care tag still attached. "I didn't know what else to bring," he said with an awkward shrug. "Mom always said these were low maintenance. Figured it fits your vibe." I laughed harder than I had in months. We sat in the backyard for hours, talking not about the house, not about the legal fight, but about everything else. Music. Old cartoons. The neighbor's dog who still barked like he was on peril. It was easy. For once. He didn't apologize right away. But he didn't need to. I could see it in the way he listened now. In the way he didn't interrupt. In the way he finally looked me in the eye when he said, "I didn't know how much it cost you to stay in this family." He moved out of Mother's orbit too. Got a job in Chicago. Sends me postcards from time to time. People ask me all the time if I sold the house. No, I say. I transformed it. I started hosting community gatherings in the backyard, book clubs, journaling circles, quiet tea mornings where people could just exist. No performance. No pressure. Just peace. The dining room, once a battlefield, became a shared table. Friends would come over, bring potluck dishes, sit where Mother used to assign seats, and laugh without caution. It healed something in me every time. I even started a podcast. Something small, recorded right from the parlor. It was called Ungrateful, Reclaiming Your Story. The first episode was messy and nervous, but honest. I talked about what it means to be labeled, silenced, minimized, and how to take that story back. To my surprise, it grew. Slowly but meaningfully. People wrote in, sharing their own family dynamics, their own reclaiming stories. I wasn't alone anymore. And neither were they. I did get one letter from Mother, 6 months after the ruling. It was short.
Typed.
No return address. "Claire, I hope you're happy with what you've taken. You always needed everything to be yours. Consider this the last thing I ever give you." Silence. Mom. I didn't cry. I didn't feel rage. I felt free. It was her final attempt to sting me. But she was wrong. Silence wasn't a punishment. It was a gift. It gave me space to breathe. Space to grow. Space to live without the static of her disappointment humming in the background. I burned the letter. Then I planted roses in the front yard. Bright yellow ones. She always hated yellow. Said it looked too common. I wanted it to look common. I wanted this home to look like something people could step into and feel real in. Not perfect. Not pristine. Just human. I don't know if I believe in fate. But I do believe in reclaiming what was meant for you. This house was once a symbol of everything I couldn't have. Everything I wasn't allowed to touch without permission. Now it's a living, breathing extension of me. It has flaws. It has laughter. It holds silence with grace. It is mine, not just in deed, but in soul. And when people walk through it now, they don't say, "This looks like your mother's house." They say, "This feels like you." And I smile every time, because it does. You know, for the longest time, I carried the word ungrateful like it was etched onto my skin. Every time someone questioned me, doubted me, or looked at me with that same judgment my mother once did, it echoed in my chest. I began to wonder, was I really ungrateful? Or was I just refusing to be controlled? There's a difference between being ungrateful and having boundaries. One protects your dignity. The other protects someone else's ego. My story isn't just about a house or even a mother-daughter relationship gone sour. It's about reclaiming your right to choose peace, to choose truth, to choose yourself, even when doing so makes other people uncomfortable. My mom believed that providing a roof, a plate, and an expectation was the same as love. That loyalty meant obedience. That silence was gratitude. But real gratitude is not blind submission. Real gratitude is acknowledging what you've been given, while also recognizing what you've had to give up, and deciding whether the trade was ever fair. There were nights when I stared at the ceilings of that house, her dream home, wondering if I had become the villain in someone else's story, wondering if I had pushed too far, wanted too much, refused too loudly. But those thoughts never lasted long, because deep down I knew the truth. I didn't take the house out of revenge. I took it because it represented every time I stayed quiet when I should have spoken, every time I settled when I should have stood. Every time I tried to love someone who only loved me back when I was useful, small, compliant. It wasn't about bricks and beams. It was about taking back space, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Maybe you've been told you're ungrateful, too. Maybe by a parent or a partner, or someone who gave you just enough to make you feel indebted, but not enough to let you feel free. Let me tell you something I wish someone had told me sooner. You don't owe anyone your silence in exchange for shelter. You don't have to shrink just to stay safe. And most of all, love should never feel like a loan you're constantly repaying. Today, that house is mine. But more importantly, I'm mine. My voice. My choices. My peace. The walls don't echo with judgment anymore. They echo with music, with laughter, with stillness, and sometimes with the sound of me cooking pasta at 2 a.m. just because I can. There's no more tension in the corners. No more side comments at the dinner table. No more eggshells underfoot. Just me and the life I rebuilt. And to my mother, if she's watching or hearing this story told through whispers or family gossip, I don't hate you. I never did. But I've finally learned that forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the fire. It means recognizing the burn, treating the scar, and walking forward without guilt. Maybe one day, she'll understand that control isn't love. That power doesn't heal. That sometimes the child you label ungrateful is the one who grows strong enough to break a cycle you were too afraid to admit existed. And if she never understands, that's okay too. Because I do. And maybe now so do you. So if you're out there, holding your tongue, biting back tears, questioning your own worth, know this. You are not too much. You are not too loud. You are not too ambitious, too sensitive, too proud, too different. You are just enough. And you deserve a home, whether it's in bricks or within your own heart, that lets you breathe freely. Let people call you ungrateful, if they must. Gratitude doesn't mean silence. It means honoring your soul. And your soul is worth everything. There's a silence that comes after a storm. It isn't loud or proud. It's not the kind you shout from rooftops or post about online. It's the kind that settles in your bones and reminds you, you made it through. You're still here. And you didn't break. The night after I signed the papers for the house, my house now, I stood barefoot in the middle of the living room. No furniture. No framed photos. No family.
Just me.
And the echo of everything that had happened. I walked through the hallway slowly, trailing my fingers along the smooth, white walls she once decorated with family portraits. I passed by the spot where my mom used to hang her gratitude plaque. It was gone now. Fitting, I guess. But I wasn't angry. I wasn't gloating. I was finally still. For years, I chased her approval like a shadow. I shrank myself to fit into a mold she carved. I begged for recognition. For kindness. For love. But standing there alone, I realized I'd been searching in the wrong places. And for the wrong reasons. What I truly wanted wasn't her validation. It was to be free of the need for it. I didn't need her to say I'd done well. I didn't need my brother to acknowledge how hard I worked. I didn't need anyone to clap when I crossed my finish line. Because somewhere along the journey, I stopped running for them. And I started walking strong, steady, and quiet for myself. I lit a single candle on the kitchen counter that night. No lamps. No music. Just its golden flicker reflecting off the marble she once told me I could never afford. I sipped tea in the silence and smiled. Not because I'd won, but because I'd become. I'd become the woman who didn't crumble when she was shut out. The woman who built without applause. The woman who took the bricks thrown at her and laid a foundation. In that moment, I whispered aloud, not to my mother, not to Jason, not to the ghosts of the past. I whispered to the version of me who once cried behind a locked door, wondering why love had to feel so conditional. You were never ungrateful. You were just growing. And now? Now I'm home.